Day 9 of 30 days of how to avoid being an accidental racist. But I'm married to a black man, or I'm married to a black woman, or I adopted a black kid, or my kid is black, or whatever. Trying to prove proximity to blackness is an issue. No need to try and prove it, okay? You could marry a black man. It's totally okay, but that does not absolve you of blind spots, okay? So I want you to know where I'm coming from. I am a biracial, multicultural child of God, as I call myself. My mother was white, lily white, blonde, blue eyes, and my father was blackety black, as dark as all of that, okay? Almost. And I know what I'm talking about. I came to this country at 16, considering myself biracial, and I found out I was black because it's a cultural framework, not a factual framework, right? This is not black, right? But I fall under the racial category of black in this country, period. Okay? That gives me the authority to talk about this because I've understood myself to be something different because of culture. I will never understand the pain body of being a descendant of enslaved African Americans, okay? I can never understand that because it's not in my lineage. I didn't grow up in it. Now, please, I am no better, or that doesn't make me any way, better or worse than African Americans. I'm just saying my own pain body is different than African American pain body, where there's a whole lineage, right? Epigenetics proves that. So talk less, and I've experienced tons of racism after 40 years in this country, yet I understand mine is not as deep. Talk less of a white person who doesn't get to experience this stuff on a daily basis. It took maybe 25 years for my eyes to be much more open to the orbit I was in, okay? You're not absolved of racism and the privileges accorded to you just because you're married to a white man, a black man, or whatever, Latino, whatever. And just because you have sex and you're intimate with a black body and you feel comfortable and safe in the presence of a black body does not make you black or does not absolve you, okay? And also, if you're a white woman sleeping with a black man in the United States of America, please take the time to understand the global and historical context of what you're doing and be sensitive, okay? You must know that most of the lynchings of black men historically were because they were perceived or accused of flirting with, looking at, or desiring a white woman's body. The mythology of the black man, let's be adults on this video. The mythology of the black man and the big penis is part of this entire foolishness. The strength of the black male body, and that was akin to horses and cows and valued at that during slavery, was considered animalistic, and that mythology still permeates our systems. We don't allow black men to be tender and emotional and loving. We think of them as brutes that the mythology of the ethos says you're brutes, you're over-sexualized, your penises are too big, you're an animal. That's why we have them on football fields and causing even more mayhem in the black community, right? These are big issues within the black community that you must be aware of. The idea that black men have an insatiable sexuality and are forceful, violent is all part of it. And yet, there are not enough black men available for black women who do not want to date outside their race. Because systemic racism, many black men are in prison. The percentages are ridiculous. I don't want to get into that. Go Google it. A lot of black men have also been turned gay or are on the down low because the culture doesn't allow them to express their sexuality fully. There's also a lot of talk and history about how black men were raped by white men on the ships and in slave plantations to subdue black men. There's that history of how that made, I don't know how, that influenced gay behavior, same-sex behavior among black men? I don't know, but you need to be aware that those tropes, those mythologies exist out there. And here you are, a white woman on a black man's arm, and you wonder why the sisters are glaring at you. This is painful for black women. And then black women are not the beauty standard of the racialized culture that we're in, right? Dark skin is not what we value. We just started looking at a Lupita Nyong'o, right? We just started saying, oh, she's beautiful. Never has a dark-skinned woman been a theme of beauty. The other thing is, look at Viola Davis's autobiography and Tarana Burke. These are dark-skinned, brilliant women that have changed the world. And in the first chapter, they talk about ugly, how they were ugly. They were called ugly. They believed themselves to be ugly. And that is the scenery that black women, dark-skinned black women, fall against with the culture. That's the framework of the culture we're in, okay? Their environments created and supported the myth of ugly and dark and woman. There's so much wounding of women, of black women, who never feel chosen, who never feel prioritized, who never feel beautiful, whose brilliance and intelligence has to be way, and their hard work has to be way more than everybody else just to get to halfway where they want to get to. This culture could make that a liability for black women. The level of self-esteem that they need and capacity to overcome. And then we want to say, oh, you're so resilient that we tired. I'm not dark-skinned and I'm tired. Talk less. Okay, I have colorism. We'll talk about that another day. Colorism privilege. We'll talk about that another day. Also, broken homes. Every little girl needs fatherly attention and motherly attention. And if we come from broken homes, we may go through life seeking fatherly attention and male attention and not getting it and not being chosen. It is painful. So how do you have compassion in this instance? Love who you love. Have compassion for black women when you're outside. Do yourself a favor. Put yourself in the shoes of the person I've just addressed with you. Tread gently. Do not be that unintentional bull in a china shop and mess up the sisters around you. Don't do that. And then what is the action you can take? Do not be clingy with your man in public. If he's talking to a black woman, if a black woman looks at him or anything, do not be clingy. Just be to the side. Do you be happy? Don't be threatened by black women, and don't start clinging on, and don't. Bye. Here's a bonus to this subject right here. When my father, black man, met my mother in New York City in 1947 when they got married, well, they met before that, he was working on a PhD at Columbia University, and he was looking in a partner for an intellectual partner. He met my mom. They had very similar interests. The way they met was outside of the university, and they were both on the very nerdy side of life. There were very few African American or Caribbean or African women in his university, and he was one of the handful of black people there, period. Okay? And so there were no women. And what he was looking for at a time, being uninitiated into all of this understanding of race and women and black women, he met my mother, fell in love, married her, took her to Nigeria. She lived there for 30-umpteen years, as we say. We're not sure if it's 34, 36. She was not taking a black man away from his available pool of black women that was around him and he was aware of. I do believe in simple love. Person meets person and they fall in love. That's not what I'm talking about. What I do know in relationships is you have to understand the context of where the person comes from. And also, if you have children, to ensure the well-being of your children, you have the responsibility as a parent to prepare that adopted black child or that multiracial black child to be black in the world. You have that responsibility. Being oblivious to it because of whatever does not help that child and will be a liability down the road.